now my honor to call up John Amidon, who is involved with the 10th chapter of Veterans for Peace, which is an organization that was formed in 1985, really to oppose Ronald Reagan's war on the people of South America. John is an outspoken activist. He is a terrific human being. He is a veteran who has risen to the call with a willingness to be arrested, to speak truth to power, to stand against the crowd, and to be a real voice for sanity and peace in our time. It's a great privilege to share this floor with him. John Amidon.
My talk today is titled Teaching Peace, and it was originally titled A Higher Command When Soldiers Disobey Immoral Orders. I'm going to touch upon both subjects. I do really want to teach something practical for your immediate use in teaching peace, and it's been touched upon a number of times already. We live in a society where we view ourselves as competitors. We do not view each other as brothers and sisters. We tend not to work in cooperation with each other, and even on the highways. So immediately, I want to give you an opportunity for a paradigm shift. When you're driving home tonight, if you're a competitor, think about driving in a way which helps everybody else on the road get home safely by looking at it as an exercise in cooperation and not a race. And that kind of paradigm shift can simply get us home safely and be an important revelation. It was for me when somebody explained it to me in working peacefully with each other. One of the things in conflict resolution that I learned and I thought was extremely important, it's very basic, very simple. Probably most of you know it. You will when you hear. There are 5 types of conflict resolution styles, and they are, normally I do a question and answer, but I want to keep things moving along. So how do we resolve conflicts? Fight or flight, which is in academic terms usually referred to as competition or avoidance. And then there is cooperation, accommodation, and compromise. All of these are useful at the appropriate time. Often we just tend to think of fight or flight, competition, or avoidance and go to one of those very quickly. But please remember the other styles of conflict resolution and apply them. They're very useful too if we can just keep things in mind when we're under stressful situations. So if I was specifically speaking on a higher command when soldiers disobey immoral orders, I would probably subtitle this talk Daniel Ellsberg and Bradley Manning, two military men who have been exceptionally helpful to democracy. And why is that? Living in a democratic society, we are necessarily entitled to and absolutely need to have good information about what our government's doing because we vote on the decision-making process and how we are represented. And when everything is kept in secret, we don't have any good information anymore. We don't actually know what's going on. And when you look at the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, they made it legal to put propaganda pieces in the media. They made it possible to legally put disinformation for you and I to read. So how the hell do we make an intelligent decision anymore when the government openly acknowledges and works to lie to us, its citizens? It's very serious. There are many violations, but this is one of the most egregious. We used to refer to things as the military-industrial complex, and now we Some of us refer to it as the military-industrial corporate media complex, because the fourth estate is no longer reporting to us or serving its role in a way that has any integrity whatsoever. And that is truly distressing if we are going to have a republic and a democratic society. I wanted to mention a variety of different topics because it's teaching peace is terribly important. Some of you are educators, and I wanted to mention the historical timeline that was used when I was a child. And basically in American history, I was taught the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Korean conflict. The whole timeline was wars. And when I finally got out of high school, I'm wondering, because all of this is presented as normal, healthy human activity in our historical dialectic. And I got out of high school and I say, where's my war? I'm ready. I'm militarized before I ever get out of high school. I'm ready to go to fight the next war. And they had the next war waiting for us, the war in Vietnam. If we want to teach peace, we're going to have to change the way we teach our history and to change the way we use timelines. We could have timelines which were based on human rights, the women's right to vote, civil rights, medical rights, gay rights, the evolution of humane treatment for prisoners, many, many positive life-affirming alternatives rather than how we went to war and destroyed and killed and maimed, and in the meantime undermined our own society. And how is our society being undermined? Well, we don't have money for our schools anymore. We don't have money for our roads. We have cities in collapse. I was in Detroit several years ago, and I was shocked. You know what? And then I came home and I looked what was right in front of me and I hadn't seen. Cities like Amsterdam, New York, Schenectady, New York, Gloversville. Much of upstate New York is in collapse too. Why is that? Where are all our resources going? Well, 48% of our resources right now are going to military endeavors of one kind or another. We need those resources to take care of people right here. We need those resources for veterans' health care, for housing, for universal health care, for education. We know that. One of the truly great Americans who I admire, Frederick Douglass, said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." We need to demand that our government, and I don't usually use the word demand, but it's time we get angry, because the quality of our life is diminishing right before our eyes. Our environment is collapsing around us. We have so many problems with nuclear waste. Several people are here from the state of Washington. There's Hanford out there. It's probably the mother of all nuclear waste sites. It needs to be cleaned up. There are radioactive materials leaking into the Columbia River. Governors over the years of the state have written and begged for resources. Let's get this place cleaned up. Nothing has happened. West Valley in New York State by the Great Lake, Ontario, I believe, is nuclear waste and unlined trenches. I live in Albany, New York. We had a depleted uranium waste site, NL Industries, right in the heart of the city. That actually was cleaned up. 11 acres took $180 million plus, but the surrounding neighborhoods weren't cleaned up. So we need those resources, and we, the people, need to insist that they be spent rightfully on this country and taking care of the people here, and not fighting illegal, immoral wars in countries that haven't attacked us, like Iraq. And we have a little war going on in Pakistan, undeclared. I get really upset because I'm a veteran. I took an oath to the Constitution of the United States. I still serve that Constitution, and it is denied to us in our own defense. And I need to explain something really quickly, a little bit technical. When I go out and do civil resistance, and that's different from civil disobedience. Both are important, both are very necessary. Civil disobedience is when you break an unjust law to show that the law is unjust. And that was done so well with the people who refused to go to the back of the bus or integrated lunch counters in the civil rights movement. And they showed the unjustness of these laws, and they broke them. And extremely well done, extremely effective in changing our society for the better. Civil resistance, on the other hand, insists upon that the government honors and obeys the law. It's okay. Little musical interlude. Technology. So when I'm going out to do a civil resistance.
I'm sorry, would you repeat what you were saying when the phone rang?
I'm not quite sure what you missed, but I was talking about civil resistance and the difference. Okay, civil resistance is when we go out to do an action, we insist that the government obey the law. We're not breaking the law. We're going to a base or a site and saying, look, this is the law. I refuse to be complicit in murder, and I need you to change your conduct, even if you are the government of the United States, even if you are the military. Specifically, my last arrest was at Hancock Airfield, and we were protesting drones. The use of drones, the use of Hellfire missiles. And why are we doing that? Well, because we're killing a lot of innocent people. We do signature killings by profile. Our military doesn't even know who they're killing. We do double tapping. If you don't know what double tapping is, I'm going to give you a brief explanation. They cite a group of people. Maybe there's a real terrorist in the group. Maybe they don't. Our intelligence isn't very good. We've found out because we've consistently attacked funeral processions and wedding parties over and over again. But maybe, okay, let's say there is a terrorist in that group. They shoot a missile. They kill the people. They kill the terrorist. Then first responders come. They may be their person's neighbors. They may be curiosity seekers. They may be first aid people. Clearly not terrorists. They shoot a second missile and they kill the second group. This is a war crime. I object. I'm not going to be complicit with murder. So I'm going to that base, and my friends are going to that base to say, no, this is unacceptable, totally unacceptable. We need you to obey the laws. You know this is a crime. I am obligated by the Constitution of the United States, Article 6, where you as a citizen are obligated to make your government aware of its criminal transgressions. That's what we're doing. Making our government aware of its criminal transgressions. So for my last particular action, I was charged with criminal trespass and loitering. Loitering because I was wearing a mask, and that's an interesting bit of law which I knew nothing about. But the criminal trespass, because actually I didn't actually criminal trespass either. Curiously enough, I was in the zone which was dubbed the free speech zone. However, you know, this whole country, according to our Constitution, is a free speech zone. And these setting up of tiny little areas is another violation of the First Amendment. And we need to insist upon our right to assemble and petition our government with grievances, and that's what we're doing. So obviously I'm very much interested in drones, and there's, in that information packet I gave you, there's an article which gives you some really basic information about drone warfare, about double tapping, and will allow you to explore that a bit more in depth online. There's another article on the Minuteman III missile launches, and in 2012 I was arrested at Vandenberg Air Force Base with Daniel Ellsberg, one of my heroes, Louis Vitale, another one of my heroes, and a group of really wonderful people. And we're protesting Minuteman III missile launches. Why are we doing that? That one should be really simple. But most people have so normalized nuclear weapons, they don't even think about them anymore. How many nuclear weapons does it take to end life as we know it? To so disrupt the environment that there will be no sustainable agriculture for 10 years and we'll all starve to death? The answer is 300 nuclear explosions in cities will kick up enough smoke and soot to block out 70% of the sunlight for 10 years, which means if nuclear weapons are used, we as a species have become the ultimate suicide bomber and have killed all of us. Just 300. You know how many the United States has? It has slightly over 5,000 nuclear warheads. The Russians have slightly over 5,000. 300 ends the world for human beings and mammals. Why do we need 5,000? Why are we protesting Minuteman III missiles, ICBMs? Because we have 450 missiles. And if we use those in a unilateral attack, and the enemy never fired anything at us, we're still all dead. It's that simple. I don't know why people don't understand that. Some people take security in the fact that we can destroy the world. They take comfort in it. There's something irrational there. There's no comfort for me. And I would really like to see your grandchildren and your children have a future. That's why I'm doing these things. There are so many problems that we face, and we need to stand up as a people. There's Fukushima, still leaking radiation. We don't think about it because our media isn't really giving us any great information on that. There's, as I already mentioned, Hanford and a variety of nuclear waste sites all over the country. In fact, all of our nuclear plants are nuclear waste sites. We have no long-term storage technology, nor do we actually have a site where we can agree to put this waste at, so it's scattered all over the country. If we found a site, by the time we transported all that waste there would be, statistically speaking, there would be some accidents in just the transportation, which would create great problems. And the site would be filled by the time we got all of that waste there. So there are really severe problems, both environmentally and with the uses of the resources that we have right now. And we need, as a people, to stand together and start addressing these, regardless of the politics, regardless of the greed and the profit-taking I have a sign here. It's one of our national campaigns. How's the war economy working for you? And it's an open question, because for some people the war economy actually is working well. President Bush and his family, boy did they get rich from the wars. Dick Cheney and Halliburton, extraordinary profits. But how about the average veteran? Last time I checked the figures, there was an extraordinary amount of unemployment among veterans, and it was at least 20% were homeless. So most people aren't doing very well. And we need to address that, and Veterans for Peace does address that. I'd like to talk a bit about Veterans for Peace as an organization. We have a statement of purpose, and I'm going to read this because I think it's worth reading. We, having dutifully served our nation, do hereby affirm our greater responsibility to serve the cause of world peace. To this end, we will work with others to increase public awareness of the cost of war, to restrain our government from intervening overtly and covertly in the internal affairs of other nations, to end the arms race and to reduce and eventually eliminate nuclear weapons, to abolish war as an instrument of national policy. To achieve these goals, members of Veterans for Peace pledge to use nonviolent means and to maintain an organization that is both democratic and open, with the understanding that all members are trusted to act in the best interest of the group for the larger purpose of world peace. We have non-veteran members in our organization also, and our non-veteran members are vital and very important to us as our veteran members. We are primarily a veterans organization with roughly 80% membership of veterans. I would invite any and all of you to join us. We have roughly 4,000 members. We're a small organization. Most people don't quite make the transition from violence to nonviolence. It's a difficult one, and it's based in love. One of the amazing things about my Vandenberg arrest, and one of the other benefits of doing civil resistance, is that you can grow tremendously spiritually. And it's been beautiful. I mean, I've had experiences that I probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. I certainly hadn't. One, when I crossed the line at Vandenberg, I've always been greatly interested in nuclear issues because we can end the world in a half an hour. And by the way, the Minuteman III missiles are on high alert. The decision to launch is necessarily made in 13 minutes by the president. So you can be killed by an electronic glitch, misinformation, any number of accidents can occur with that short a period of time. Not only that, we don't need those missiles in the least. Why? Because we have the Trident submarines and we have bombers. Minuteman III missiles are fixed and they're an easy target, and they kind of demand a first strike, as they are first strike weapons. But they are absolutely useless and only ensure our own destruction. And even from a military standpoint, we flat out don't need them. So I'm asking people to call and tell the president, hey, we need to save some money. This is a weapon system that is archaic, useless, and dangerous. Let's get rid of it, as we need to get rid of all nuclear weapons. I lost my train of thought, honestly, when I went back to nuclear weapons. I was at Vandenberg Air Force Base and talking about a spiritual experience. And I crossed that line that night because I am really upset about our suicidal tendencies with nuclear weapons and the lack of understanding and the normalization of these so that we just accept them. But I'm also crossed the line that night because there is a priest, Father Louis Vitale, who is a man who is about 80 years old, a little older actually at this point. That night he wasn't feeling all that well. He had a hernia, and he was still crossing the line to try and bring attention to the fact we need to abide by the Non-Proliferation Treaty, where we are obligated to disarm. So I'm looking at Louis, he's a friend, and he's 80, and he's not well, and he's crossing the line, and I say, when am I going to stand up? He's not going to be here forever. You know, it's really my time, and I need to support this man because I love this man. And when you do something out of love, an amazing transformation can happen. I'm not saying it will. Everybody has their own experience. But for a moment, I clicked off my fear file, the bit of consciousness I have that's afraid and keeps everything in this society in place, because fear so keeps this society in place. Fear of losing your job, your license, what your neighbors will think. If you're a clergy, the support of your parishioners and the money coming in. If you're a politician, will you be reelected? And it goes on and on. All of this fear. And we know what sensible and intelligent decisions are, and we don't make them because we're afraid. Well, anyway, for a moment, my fear file clicked off. I didn't expect it. I didn't even know it could happen. And my consciousness was freed up. And there was a space. God bless it. It was such a beautiful space. And in that space just flowed in love. Human consciousness is connected to love, whether we know it or not. And unfortunately, most of us haven't come to that realization. And I was just lucky or blessed, and it was an epiphany. But I now know that consciousness is connected to love. And when we're not afraid, we can handle situations. When we're acting out of love, we can do things we have never imagined. We can make this the planet we want it to be. We can make this the America we want it to be. We can rid ourselves of racism and militarism and poverty. It is all possible when we start acting out of love. There was more material I had prepared, and I, at the moment, don't actually feel the need to go any further. So I really want to thank you for your attention, and I truly wanted to thank the conference organizers for inviting me. I did call them up and say, sure you know who you're getting? And they said, yeah. I said, you still want me? They said, yeah. I said, great, I'm really pleased to come. I wanted to thank Ed Tick and Kate Dahlstead. We had a really splendid retreat. I'm not sure splendid is quite the right word, but it was such a beautiful experience. When people get together, looking at each other as our brothers and sisters, cooperating, really talking to each other to try and make things better, we do make things better. And that was a demonstration of that yesterday. So it was a very powerful and beautiful experience. And I just want to thank all of you for being here and your attention. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to entertain questions and answers. Yes?
I admire you.
Thank you.
I do. Have you brought this to the attention of politicians like congresspeople or senators or anything like that? And I'm sure you may have.
Oh yeah, we have.
What do they say?
Mostly, they say, oh, we really tried, but the political climate is such that we just can't get anything done right now. Or they say, get the hell out of here, depending on, we're not interested. There are a variety of inappropriate responses. and nothing has gotten done. I mean, we've tried the legislative branch. We have treaties. We have laws. They're not enforced. We've tried the executive branch. Now we're trying the courts and creating dialogue with civil resistance. And the courts are failing us too. They're part of the system of oppression and domination, mostly. When I was, again, at Vandenberg, the attorney put in, the prosecuting attorney, district attorney, put in a motion in limine. The motion in limine is used to include or exclude evidence, as I understand it. And it's handled by a judge, not before a jury. Mostly we don't have jury trials. They're bench trials. We don't quite meet the threshold of meeting the requirements for jury trials, which is usually over 180 days in jail time. So the prosecuting attorney put in a motion of limine to prevent us from using Article 6 of the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, the necessity defense, and to put our actions into context, to tell the whole truth, to allow a sensible and reasonable discussion to happen so that we can move forward, that we can talk like adults. Again, it is that adversarial relationship. The court systems, especially in the case of peace workers and peace actions, really aren't interested in justice. They're not interested in that dialogue. They're interested in keeping the status quo in place. And I was personally deeply offended that I'm not allowed to use the Constitution of the United States in my defense when it is the law of the land, and that a judge can exclude it. And I'm a veteran, and I swore an oath to uphold that Constitution. Not only did I, but all of the police officers I deal with, all of the court workers, all of the judges, and they're in violation of their oath of office. A lot of them don't understand at all the Constitution. It is, it's truly reprehensible. A little bit of an aside, because I need to mention three of my dear friends, Sister Megan Rice, Michael Wally, and Greg Obed. They did an action down at the YF-12 plant, a highly enriched uranium storage facility in Knoxville, Tennessee, actually in Oak Ridge. And if you haven't followed this case at all, I mean, this is supposed to be one of the most secure sites in the country. This is an 82-year-old woman at the time of the action who has a heart condition. She's not in the worst of health, but she's an 82-year-old woman with a heart condition and can only walk slowly. And Michael is 65 years old, a veteran, and Greg was 59. They're Catholic workers. This was a plowshares action. Anyway, they cut through the first fence, and they walk through. The most highly secure facility in the country, or one of them, supposedly. They walk through and nothing happens. They come to, amazingly, the plant, which is guarded by 3 more fences, presumably cameras and sensors and alarms. They cut through the second fence, hang some banners. Nothing happens. They cut through the third fence. And actually there's one more fence they cut through because there were 3 fences right by. They cut through that, nothing happens. Now they're in a zone where free fire is authorized. They can be killed just for standing in that zone. How incredibly brave to bring attention to our problems and the need for nuclear abolition, and the fact that our storage facilities aren't secure at all. They stood there, they splattered, through blood, traditional action, hung some banners, painted some slogans, were there for a few hours before security shows up. In a free fire, authorized to kill. And what the reports and investigation showed, sensors didn't work, the cameras were broken, at least for 6 months. The security firm, employees weren't actually paying any attention where the cameras did work. And this caused a huge embarrassment, as one might suspect. They actually beat on the building with a hammer, symbolic posthumous action, to do a little bit of damage. The people inside heard them pounding, thought it was maintenance workers. Because maintenance workers showed up at any time of the day or night to do maintenance, and the people inside were never notified. It's incredible. It's, no security at all at one of the most important facilities. Because of this, and the fact that Megan is an 83-year-old woman at this point, and the irony of it was irresistible, this became a huge story. She was in New York Times front page. They've done countless radio interviews. Washington Post ran an 8,000-word article. Anyway, trial comes, and you learn a lot when you go to trials. You learn that in a federal trial, prosecuting attorneys and defense attorneys don't get to question potential jurors. And the judge seated the jurors with a couple perfunctory questions, and if they said, we can be unbiased and listen to this fairly, they were seated, and they were seated very quickly. And then the intent and what the purpose was disallowed. They weren't allowed to bring up Article 6. They weren't of the Constitution, any of the laws that were applicable from their point of view. And they testified, and the government was playing real hardball and charged them with sabotage, the attempt to disrupt the national security of the United States. Carries 20-year sentence. They were also charged with property damage, over $1,000, carries 10-year sentence. Anyway, to make a long story short, they were convicted of both charges, sabotage and property damage. And all they're trying to do is say, look, we need our government to live up to the laws that apply to them to stop this criminal activity, to disarm, to remove, abolish, decommission, dismantle nuclear weapons so that our children and our planet can have a future. That's their intent. The laws, it turns out, the way it's written by Congress, there is no way in that law for a judge to discriminate between a peace activist and a terrorist. So they sit in jail, waiting to be sentenced on September 23rd. And for them, I would request two things. One is prayers for those who are inclined to pray, because we are, in effect, praying for ourselves and our future and our well-being. And I would also recommend calling whoever you feel comfortable calling, be it your representative or your senator or the president, and insist that these people be released for providing this country with a much-needed service. Other questions?
It's always been, when you're doing cross-border operations in AFPAC, what the DOD calls Afghanistan, Pakistan. They do not make a distinction. It's what we should have learned in Vietnam, we didn't. When we're doing cross-border operations in the old days, we sent skilled warriors in Laos and Cambodia to find out exactly how many, where, when, and how. Then they'd call in a very specific airstrike. Now, I'm not going to guarantee you that every one of those airstrikes will collateral damage in villages, because unfortunately for us, the bad guys, just like they did in Hanoi and Haiphong, would set up next to someplace so they could use that as an excuse for American air pirates bombing. I'm not making any excuses. I'm just telling you this is what went down. Now, when you use a drone, if you use it intelligently, you have a boot on the ground guiding that aircraft. You do not depend on a guy in St. Louis, Missouri, or Kansas City sitting behind a desk in a computer that's never been in a combat zone and can't tell the difference between a group of villagers in a wedding procession and a bad guy. I'm sure if you're a Catholic, I'd be sitting there with a rosary going, please God, don't let me screw up and kill some innocent civilians. I mean, that would be me at that control board. So the whole concept has gotten to the point where the guys in the puzzle palace, as I refuse to, as I call the Pentagon, have decided this is the new way to wage war. It's more quote-unquote surgical, and by the same token, my man's point is exactly right. Every time we get it wrong, we just recruited more young people to fight against American troops. So all I'm going to tell you is that this double down, they do that to make, that's an insurance policy that they got, quote unquote, the right people. That's it. Go ahead.
I'm going to take, Kate, please.
Yeah. Just to kind of bring this back to the topic at hand for this conference, it seems to me part of what you're talking about is the immorality piece, the immorality of our current wars and how that impacts our veterans. And the things that our military is asking them to do that violate the military codes and violates their own internal sense of right and wrong. So one veteran put it to me, to us, that it's when your head tells you to do something that your heart knows is wrong. And our military is asking our troops to do that over and over again. And then you have on top of that so many civilian deaths. And we know that the most psychologically damaging things are civilian deaths and the morality of the war you're fighting. And if those things are not right, then you're going to have to expect that people are going to come back and they're not going to feel like they fit into this country, and they're not going to feel like whole human beings. And that's really what you're talking about.
Thank you.
And then they're going to also, the other piece is that they come back and they have to question the very country that they went to defend. And they have to come back and feel like that the mission was a wrong mission and that their country isn't living up to its own values. And they, as individuals, perhaps went to defend those values when their own country is not living up to them. So that all contributes to the conflict that they come home with. And that we as a culture need to be sensitive to.
You know, honestly, we can move past war. Humanity doesn't have to engage in war. We do have the faculty for choice when we choose to exercise it. We do have some profound cognitive abilities. And while certainly there is the irrational aspect of our being, there is the capacity to work with that in creative and life-affirming ways rather than killing each other. War is obviously archaic and barbaric, and we no longer need to believe, nor should we allow ourselves to believe, that we are killers, that we are this barbaric, irrational, reptilian creature that goes out and slaughters and maims and may well end the planet. That's a lot of rubbish. We're better than that. I believe in us. Thank you.